Welcome everybody to the sixth episode of Coach by TripleDart. I'm your host, Glenn Bona. I'm an organic growth manager here at TripleDart. And like you, I'm beyond excited for what we're about to learn from today's guest. Before I introduce him, for those who are new here, let me set the stage a bit and give you some background on the company behind this series. TripleDart is a growth marketing agency specializing in both paid and organic channels, primarily for B2B SaaS companies. Founded in 2021, our agency has grown pretty rapidly to a team of 70 plus marketing professionals, and we have locations in India, Singapore, and the US. We've had the privilege to work with some incredible companies and brands. Some notable ones are Freshworks, MoEngage, SpendFlow, and Plivo. And if you're interested in learning more about how we can help grow your company, feel free to reach out to me or apply directly on our website today. Now, I'd like to welcome you all to the Coach by TripleDart series, a new initiative that we started this year. And we've been fortunate to have spent time with 5 amazing guests already. This series gives everyone a chance to listen and learn directly from marketing leaders and growth veterans in the B2B space. Our goal is to ensure that everyone who attends or watches this recording via YouTube comes away with practical knowledge to execute on what was shared and discussed today. So for this episode, we have Mason Yu, who will be leading today's talk on programmatic SEO. Mason is a marketing lead at Marketerhire. Prior to this, he was leading programmatic SEO initiatives at ClickUp and was a head of outreach at Omniscient, where we both work together. He also is currently a joint MBA CS candidate at the Chicago Booth School of Business, focusing on product management, marketing strategy, and computer science. Mason comes with a wealth of experience, and there is no doubt in my mind that y'all are going to come away with great insight and a playbook to get things started on your end. Without further ado, Mason, it's my pleasure to have you on Coach by TripleDart. Feel free to take it away.
Great. First off, can you hear me? Just double checking.
Loud and clear.
Great. And thanks so much, Glenn, and thanks so much, TripleDart, for inviting me to this presentation. Let me just pull up my slide share. Okay. How's that?
Looks great.
Great. Okay, so good. Okay, I just want to double check all the tech is working. So yeah, once again, thank you so much for having me on. I feel very fortunate to have a chance to share my experience in probably the hottest topic in SEO, which is programmatic SEO. So just a caveat, I'm still learning just like you all, but I've gotten a chance to oversee several launches each at the 2 companies I've worked with, as well as I've advised on a sales and retention strategy for a new programmatic SEO startup, which is Daydream. You might want to check them out. Doing some cool stuff there. So let's just kind of get started. So today we're in an SEO workshop, so I naturally have to start with a what is question. So what is programmatic SEO? My definition is that it's an operational process where you're enabled to publish a lot of hyper-personalized pages that all target a similar intent. So notice how I said it's not a strategy, it's an operational process. This is something that I have a pretty strong opinion about. You don't pursue a programmatic SEO strategy. You actually pursue an SEO strategy, and you use programmatic SEO to achieve the SEO strategy. Okay, so over here on the right, we see WalletHub's programmatic SEO pages centered around how much are blank delta miles worth, right? And you can kind of see I just took out 4 examples here. There's pages for 10,000 miles, pages for 11,000, 12,000, 13,000 miles, right? So I stumbled upon this set of programmatic pages the other day because I was actually looking up how much my 89,000 miles were worth. And when I was searching on Google, I got pretty much an exact match page from Wallet Hub. I stumbled across this page that was like, how much are 80,000 miles worth? Right. And so I started digging around because I'm like, this is kind of interesting that they targeted 89,000, right? So it turns out that Wallet Hub has pages for all the mileage numbers from 1,000 to 100,000 miles in increments of 1,000. So they had how much are 1,000 miles worth, how much are 2,000 miles worth, all the way up to 100,000. So yeah, this is just a straightforward classic example of programmatic SEO in the wild. I just wanted to kind of plant that seed in your mind's eye for what a solid example might actually look like as we start talking about all these concepts. You can kind of imagine this example. So before we get too much into the meat and potatoes, I wanted to start by addressing a couple of commonly held myths around programmatic SEO and my take on all of them. So first off, programmatic SEO is spam, right? We kind of sometimes hear that because people talk about publishing 1,000 pages at once or 2,000 pages, right? Or like the other example, right? Like 1,000 miles, 2,000 miles, 3,000. Isn't that spam, right? So let me ask you this. If I wanted to know exactly how much my 89,000 miles were worth, would it have been more helpful for me to land on this Times article where they kind of gave me a way to calculate my miles? They talked about, like it's a huge article. Or would it have been more helpful to just land on this Wallet Hub article where exactly they told me the number of miles I had and how much it was worth, right? And so traditional content approach to this keyword might have been to write this gigantic article with all the FAQs, right? How do you calculate the miles? What are the miles? The history of the miles, right? And I would have to be scrolling around to look for my answer. But instead, through the Wallet Hub pages, they actually thought like a product manager, and they answered exactly my query, and I was able to just quickly look at the article and get my answer right away. So, in all of us SEOs, we're supposed to be answering the query very directly and to the intent that the searcher was looking for. And so I think we would all prefer the right set of pages, the right side, right? And so that's why programmatic SEO in itself is not spam. It's actually how we talk about it and how it's perceived when we talk about it as, publishing 1,000 pages. So I don't like to talk too much around the number of pages that programmatic SEO launches are. Okay. So the next myth here, programmatic SEO equals AI content. So when people hear about this, a lot of times when they hear about programmatic SEO, they're like, tell me what AI tool you use. What about the prompts, right? Are you using GPT or Claude, right? So that's actually the wrong way to start thinking about programmatic SEO. In the era of AI and shortcuts, we actually have to think from the standpoint of how can I gain a competitive advantage using programmatic SEO? Everybody can just publish one-click AI content, right? And so instead, I actually always tell people to start by doing programmatic SEO without planning to use AI at all. And that way you can start thinking like an engineer, think all the interesting edge cases and the different kind of grammatical hiccups that might occur by using the dynamic variables that, inevitably need to be used to execute programmatic, right? So don't start using AI, right? So then after that, when you kind of approach it this way, you're going to realize that it's actually very restrictive not to use AI. And then you'll start to realize that sprinkling in AI will allow you to have flexibility in your programmatic page launches. Okay, so that's kind of how I like to think of adding the AI layer to programmatic SEO, not the first start, right? So third myth here, I get this all the time. Whenever we hear about programmatic SEO, there's always this random person who's like, but does it convert? You can see some real results here I've collected. Obviously, it converts just as well or even better. And the reason this is true is because it's sort of like you're imagining, let's say a company is sending an email with zero personalization. Let's say they're sending 1,000 people an email that doesn't include their name. It doesn't include any personalization. It's just one kind of like email, right? Versus if they sent 1,000 emails that actually all had their names, all addressed pain points of that person's specific industry, is it all very relevant to them, right? Of course, the second launch with more personalization would have better engagement rates. And of course, it would result in better business KPIs, right? So this is the same, and this is the same with programmatic SEO. We can just think of it from like standpoint of that email example, right? Like, do you want a personalized email, or do you want just like a one big email that tries to address everybody's pain points, right? So kind of continuing on to the larger question about the business case of programmatic, what's also interesting is that it allows you to go fishing. So here's an example of a page we launched near the end of my term with ClickUp. Due to the nature of when you're doing keyword research, we're going for quantity and volume. We actually ended up with a couple of pages that for products that we actually did not have. So for example, here you see we have an AI whiteboard feature, but actually we do not actually have that yet. And so you can see in that really small font, like we don't officially support a whiteboard generator, right? So, but this page actually ranked to the top and actually generated a ton of signups. And it actually validated that ClickUp actually should, consider layering AI on their whiteboard feature. So basically, this is a potential way for our product team to go fishing for market demand for their features. Okay. So now that we've kind of got that out of the way, let's kind of get into the action, right? So first off, let's think about, is your company ready for programmatic SEO? So there are certainly profiles of companies I would recommend more heavily doing this strategy, and some that I probably would not. Here are kind of three pillars I like to think through before kind of, that we all should think through before we pursue this process, right? Number one is definitely risk tolerance. Like, are you willing to spend time and resources to test this out? And the reason this is on my number one is because it does cost a lot to set up. It does take a lot of time to actually see any results and to test the results. And, just this is because this is a very completely different approach to doing SEO, in that you're actually publishing like a set of pages as like a product instead of writing an article and publishing it one at a time, right? And so that kind of a mindset shift is different, that you almost have to think you're launching a new product, right? And then the other thing is, like, especially if you're using AI, you need to be willing to risk published content having some errors and not always 100% predictable with accuracy. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is your current SEO strategy. Think about your think about your company. Like, do you guys have a good SEO strategy? Do you know your website benchmarks, like your rankability and your indexability, all of those? Like, do you have that data? Do you know that you can rank and index pages well, right? Are you able to get traditional SEO results? Are you able to get traditional SEO results, right? So the reason you need to think about this from a current like SEO strategy is that you're going to find that when you're building programmatic pages, you're going to start to need to make some compromises because you're going to launch pages at scale. So there's going to be a couple of things. Maybe the quality isn't as high of a bar as when you actually are able to write bespoke content. And so if you have a very high bar of quality already, then this will just be slightly less and it'll still be good enough, right? And then the third pillar, this is something we're all familiar with, is the market potential. Basically, we just need to do some keyword research and to know if you're in a large enough kind of area to be able to launch these pages, right? So kind of digging into the first two things you guys have to think about yourself, but this third one is, keyword research. So keyword research for programmatic SEO is quite different from traditional keyword research. We actually need to think about keyword patterns and whether the keyword pattern itself is a fit for your business. So I've listed some in this table, but there are infinitely many patterns. But this is kind of just get started to get your minds churning. If we go back to that Wallet Hub example, right? The keyword pattern is how much are blank delta miles worth. So it's very simple, right? Just the blank is the number that is going to be scaled out, right? It can be 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, right? So there's basically, they chose 100 keywords in that keyword pattern. Okay, so here, for example, like we can see localization, right? So something in state or city, right? That's an example. Jobs to be done, like use tool for task, ideal length for something, right? Industries, right? Like, so like type of, so you're basically using like project management for real estate, right? Project management for construction company, right? So I'm just gonna let you guys read all that. This is gonna be recorded, so I'm just gonna move on. But yeah, after you find some of these keyword patterns, you're going to drill into the total keyword set that you're going to publish from this keyword pattern. So all of us kind of know these research tools, SEMrush and Ahrefs. You can use phrase match I think in SEMrush, the keyword magic tool allows you to use phrase match to find all the different variants. Ahrefs has a similar tool as well in their keyword explorer. You can then see the search volumes and everything, right? Down here I mentioned, don't ignore the 0 volume keywords and the blank volume keywords, right? Because they're there for a reason. They have been searched before. So second way here, to find more keywords in your keyword set is to use auto-suggest, right? And auto-suggest might actually fill in a couple of keyword pattern or keywords that Ahrefs and SEMrush missed. Right? So that's another way to add more keywords. And so the name of the game when we're creating our keyword research set is to exhaust and maximize the number of variants that you can find within the one keyword pattern. Okay, that's the name of the game. And so, and on the third pillar here, I show you can use internal data. Your search console might have undiscovered keyword that match that set. You can also use your intuition. Actually, this was a big part of the launch that I did, is like, I just pretty much, searched, what are all the names of the industries, or what are all the names of this use case? And then I just added it without even doing any volume research in third-party tools, and then just appended it to the keyword pattern. Okay. So you can basically, the name of the game again is volume and maximizing what you think could live within this keyword pattern. Okay, next slide. So after you do that, you're gonna kind of get like a total search volume for your keyword pattern. Then you can actually assess potential results. This slide here is quite important because I'm sure some of you had to present this to your boss in order to proceed. So for all those in attendance today, you're going to get a special bonus. You're going to get the forecasting template. I think, the TripleDart team is going to send this to you guys afterwards. Or if you somehow aren't able to get it, you can feel free to DM me on LinkedIn. But yes, so let's just kind of take a quick look here. So, after you get the total volume of your keyword pattern, you're going to get that first row, like third-party volume, right? Let's say here it's 4,970, right? And this is actually just a quick check I did with the Wallet Hub data. And I just went to Ahrefs and I just pulled up the total sum of the volumes for this keyword pattern. How much is blank delta miles worth? That keyword pattern showed up as 4,970. Then the second row here is a multiplier based on the fact that we know keyword research tools usually underreport very small, long tail keywords, right? And so in my forecast sheet, there's like a way for you to calculate what this multiplier is for your own site. So here, I noticed that they were underreporting by about 2.9 times. So that's the multiplier there, right? And then you're going to get the probable volume of traffic that this entire keyword pattern will give you, right? And then you're going to calculate your CTR. So let's imagine you ranked on the first page for all those keywords. What's the kind of approximate click-through rate you're going to get? And then the next couple of rows there is just knowing your own website's conversion rate and your conversion value. And then you're going to be able to calculate your monthly pipeline, your monthly revenue, whatever that number is. Okay. So after you've convinced your boss, it's time to get cranking. We're going to just blow through the process for implementing a programmatic SEO. So unfortunately, we can't get into super long detail because it can get quite technical pretty fast. And I could be here many hours talking about all the different nuances. So I'm just going to share the top 3 essential artifacts for programmatic SEO content building. So yeah, today, all of my screenshots, they're part of the actual work product that I've used in the various capacities when I've launched programmatic pages. You're going to see a lot of spreadsheets. It's going to feel a bit DIY or DIY. Now, this is because I was building a lot of this from scratch. And a quick tip is if you do have an engineer on your team, definitely lean on them for help. I've done builds with and without engineers. It's definitely easier and could be higher quality with engineers. So, let me just go back to the slide. So you can see here, the 3 artifacts here, right? We've got the page template, we've got the content database, and then you've got your AI prompts. And I mentioned earlier, we don't want to start with AI, but it is since we have AI these days so prolific, we of course need to talk about AI as a big artifact. So first thing is the page template. So I use this initially to plan my page design, and it can be as simple as what you see there in Google Docs. Basically, you need to determine in your page, what are all the elements that's going to be static hard-coded elements? What's going to be dynamic content that might be replaceable? And then what's going to be AI content, right? You can see pretty easily in my example, right? I have a content block there that's more about dynamic replaceable content. We have the elements, which are hard-coded elements. We have a button, right? We have some trusted by branding, right? So that's basically just one line by line. I just list out all the stuff that is needed. And you can clearly see that not everything is AI, right? Because otherwise you're going to have no control. And so also by doing this exercise, you're going to be able to cost out all of your AI fees when you're running it through. Also, by breaking up your page into these various elements that you see here, you can actually start mapping everything into a table or a spreadsheet, which is where the content is ultimately going to be built, right? Your content is going to be completed in a table or spreadsheet. And so this is sort of like your data model for keeping things organized. Okay, I'm going to just pause here for a sec so you guys can look at this page template. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the next thing here is database, right? The content database. So you're going to need a place to centralize all this data. So over here we have a spreadsheet, right? I do recommend a spreadsheet easily because a lot of things integrate well with spreadsheets, and when we export data, we get CSV files, right? And so you're going to need to combine the keyword research that you did, that page template, and any kind of internal or external data that you've collected that's going to be used in the content of the page, right? And so you can see on the top right, the page template becomes the rows. So, in this screenshot here, the page template had dynamic content places for tool. It had like an image element, and then it had like a content block for a 3-sentence description. And you can see here that the table is like all the different pages are going to have those elements, but maybe dynamically different, right? So this was mapped back to the various items on the page template that you've created. So now we need to know how to use the spreadsheet well, right? Like, because you're going to be extracting values in your database and use dynamic content, you're going to be best friends with a lot of formulas. This is if you don't want to code, basically, if you don't want to use your engineer, right? But even if you use your engineer, most likely they're not going to really know what you're going for. So you're going to need to know yourself how to do a lot of this formulas with dynamic content swapping, doing if statements, doing regex match statements, and splitting text, upper and lower casing. You can kind of see on the bottom right screenshot here, there's an example of formula that I used to merge phrases of content together. So, what does, and then basically the text from column E, and then I'm adding a or an, depending on if the next word is a consonant or a vowel, and then I'm adding the text from the F column, right? And so basically you're merging and mixing words together and using formulas to do that in a table. So I know it's already getting very technical and very in the weeds, but I wanted to show you the kind of the number of investment that you probably will need to up level yourselves with and to get familiar with if you're going to pursue a programmatic SEO process, right? And so yeah, I've given some like kind of common formulas I used on these two tables here, right? Or there's two screenshots here. Okay, next. So now let's just get to AI. I'm not going to talk too much about AI because I'm sure a lot of us have gotten more familiar with it. But as you saw earlier, the page template that we created as artifact number 1, it's going to tell me which parts of my page will actually deploy AI. And so you need to build customized prompts for each of those elements, right? In a single page, I might have between 8 to 20 executions of AI content. So because of that, there's a lot of prompt engineering work. And so I do recommend saving and cataloging all of your prompts in one place as you go down the list. And so here's my advice for building AI prompts. It's a lot of grinding, but basically provide examples, be structured in your prompts, use Markdown, and then test a lot. So test weird use cases. If you have like a keyword set with 100 keywords, look at your most edge case keywords. So I think one funny example that I remember working on was something for toilet cleaning, and I thought that was like a really funny one. But that's a very edge case use case, right? So I would test the prompts on stuff that's kind of weird to make sure that it all still makes sense. Okay. So then when you're comfortable with all the prompts you've built, you can then execute them at scale using that same spreadsheet that you've been building. You can use basically one of those spreadsheet plugins, such as GPT for Sheets, or you can just make a custom Google Sheets script, right, which I ended up using. Or you can use these days, there's something called Clay. I'm sure a lot of you've heard of Clay. Clay has a good integration with OpenAI and maybe some other AI tool as well, but I've been mainly using it with OpenAI. But Clay is like this integrator database system that allows you to merge a lot of data sets together and to use AI in a very controlled fashion. Okay, so I would advise when you're executing the AI to test small batches first, because you don't want to waste all your money like on 1,000 pages that suddenly you realize there's 2 mistakes and then you have to redo it. And so they just wasted all that money. And then, yeah, if the database is big, I would recommend using Clay or a script to go through your spreadsheet instead of dragging down those formulas. I would also recommend you to like just produce one page first to look at it all compiled before you execute your entire batch, right? And see what a real page will look like and if it will make sense. Okay. So finally, you've executed your content, you've saved them into a database, and now we can find like publish, right? So there's lots of ways to publish content. There's just a couple of ways that I've seen them, and I've also kind of worked through them. But your engineering team, depending on how you publish content, everybody will have a different way to do it. The easiest kind of DIY one I've seen is like the Airtable to Whale Sync to Webflow, if you use Webflow, and then WP import export plugin can automatically publish to WordPress. Or if you can have your engineering team basically get a CSV file and create a static site. That's another easy way to do it. And so I'm not going to go too much into details here because this is usually for your publishing team, but the DIY method of like these whale syncs and Webflow is a good way to do it by yourself. And so just to recap the high level steps that we've gone through, this is a big whirlwind, I'm sure. You're probably going to need to rewatch some of these slides. But But just to recap, we need to first create the keyword patterns and to basically settle on one keyword pattern and find as many keywords as possible. Step 2 is you need to build your page template that will imagine what your page will look like and break it down into all the different elements that you need to create. The third one is to set up your database that will map to all these page template elements and also combine the keyword research and your other data that you have extrapolated. And then fourth is you need to save all your AI prompts and then deploy them in that database. And then you can publish your content. Okay, so if I were to boil it down to 5 steps, it would be these 5. So now that you're published, the waiting game will begin. It's very important that you communicate your leading indicators to your stakeholders, because this can take some time to produce results and you might have to go back and redo something. The first thing always is like indexation. When you publish all these pages, are you actually indexing all of your pages? I think a good rate is at least 75 to 80%. You're probably going to get some pages not indexed by Google because it's going to think it's duplicate, or it's just doesn't have enough traffic. Maybe your keyword research wasn't 100% correct, right? But that's okay. You can have some pages not be indexed and still be fine, right? After indexation, we're going to start seeing impressions, rankings, and then traffic and conversions. You can see a huge range of time periods that you can wait. At a big company like ClickUp, we were able to get results within a couple of weeks, right? But you could wait a couple of months before you start seeing any traffic. And so I'm just going to go to the next slide. I'm going to go through 3 real case studies. I'm just going to talk briefly about what the companies did and some of the results. Okay. Okay, so ClickUp, we all know, is a B2B project management software. The team was looking to scale content even faster than the 50 articles a month that they were publishing with really high quality content. And so at that time, I was managing a second website. And so I was able to sort of test a lot of things. And so when I decided to pursue programmatic SEO, that's where we first published a batch of pages. And I was trying to test the hypothesis that mostly duplicate pages are able to rank on Google with a couple of dynamic variables. And when we published, I think it was like 23 pages, they actually started ranking on the first page. I think 80% of them were ranking on the first page. And so that really confirmed that these pages actually were useful and serving the intent of the keywords, despite the fact that they had duplicate content with just a couple of variations, right? And so I knew that validated that hypothesis. And so because of that, we were able to kind of host a hackathon with engineers to develop a custom app so that we can quickly deploy programmatic SEO. And so after creating the app, we were able to publish 1,000 pages a month, maybe 2,000 a month, targeting all the different keyword sets within like 3 keyword patterns. And so ultimately we ended up with 10,000 pages or so. The subfolder that I was mainly focused on, it went from basically like 15K traffic to like 200K traffic, and conversions pretty much like increased even more, as you can see, because it was more hyper targeted to the use case. So here we have Modash, and hat tip to Ryan Pryor at Modash. You guys don't know him. He's in England and he's head of marketing there. He shared with me some live results of their programmatic publishing. So Modash is a B2B influencer platform, helps companies find the perfect influencer for their brand. And they were looking to grow organic channels and had all this product data around their influencers. And so Ryan worked with an engineer to launch a large batch of programmatic pages that were based on internal product data to target local keywords on influencers. And so that resulted in a very high traffic gains. You can see there, 220,000, and then a pretty nice boost in conversions for them. And then here, the last thing is, Marketerhire. We're a network of pre-vetted expert marketers, match businesses with marketers to their specific job needs. So very niche marketers are able to find very interesting jobs as well. So here, organic SEO has never really been a high priority. And so it's been very small. But at the same time, we could not invest in expensive content production. So in December, I actually launched two sets of pages around 2,000 of two sets of pages totaling 2,000. And around 4 months later, I noticed that conversions to the pages basically surpassed the results of the entire blog. And we had even one page getting 18% conversion rates. So the numbers themselves are pretty small, but we basically went from 3,000 organic blog visits with about 50 conversions to adding an additional 75 conversions. So nice little boost there as well. So yeah, that is my presentation. I know it was a very fast whirlwind. I am happy to start taking questions and hope you guys all found value in this.
Awesome. Thank you, Mason. I loved how you covered all the programmatic SEO myths in the beginning and then slowly brought us deeper into the rabbit hole without getting too technical. Hopefully everyone has sharpened up on their regex formulas. So we do have some questions that came in that we'd love for you to cover and some from our own team as well. So we'll start off with those first. So I think there's been some worry when it comes to duplicate content. Programmatic SEO leverages templates and some AI automation, which might prompt the question, should we worry about duplicate content when it comes to executing programmatic SEO?
Yeah, so I think you can see in this example here, I may just go back to my second slide. If you look at this page, it's actually like 90% duplicate content, but they all rank pretty well for the keyword specifically because it answers the query's intent, right? Like I literally like clicked on the site and I was like, oh, cool. Like I know exactly now how much my miles are worth. I also can see like they internally linked a lot of stuff. So I think if you actually are producing programmatic pages with value to the user, and that's why I keep talking about it's like launching a product, because if you launch a product that's kind of useless, then it's never going to take off. But if you're launching a product, in this case, the product is the set of 100 pages that users actually want to read and want actually answered, then Google doesn't care whether it's duplicate. And also, I validated that with the second site that I built with ClickUp, or I was managing with ClickUp. And that also validated that mostly duplicate content doesn't really matter as long as you are answering different queries with a similar intent, right? So basically, if you're creating duplicate content like 100 pages targeting literally the exact same keyword, obviously that's not a good thing, right? But these are all different keywords, and so I would worry to the extent of the risk tolerance I have. I think we kind of talked about it here. It's like your risk tolerance. So testing your appetite for risk and just knowing that you're serving the user.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. So the next one is, what are your thoughts on how you determine if there's a strategic opportunity for programmatic SEO? I think some of the more bottom of funnel content types might carry, relatively smaller amount of monthly search volume. And sometimes that doesn't really convey a compelling enough reason to deploy resources. I think you mentioned that doing programmatic SEO can be expensive at times. So what do you think? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, again, it has to do with your company's like investment profile, right? Like, so if you have, I would probably not put all of your eggs into programmatic SEO bucket if you are not pretty sure about all of your website metrics. Basically, again, it goes back to like this slide here, where it's like your current SEO strategy should kind of inform you on whether you're pretty confident in your rankability and your ability to drive value from your SEO efforts, right? So let's just keep that out of the way. Let's say that you actually are like, yeah, we're doing great with the blog. We're getting tons of traffic. We're able to rank and index quickly. Now we're ready to do programmatic. Now, how do we decide which keyword pattern to go for? A lot of times just internally looking at your own pages that are already doing well, and then thinking about, is there a pattern there that can be scaled out? And, scaled out because like this is already generating, let's say this is a pretty good bottom of funnel page for us. Like, is there a way we can just duplicate this page that's getting all this results and find all the variants for this page keyword patterns? That's like another good way to just practically go at it. I do like to start with bottom of funnel because when it works, then it's like you can attribute the value immediately. And it's also pretty cool because sometimes you can see pages getting like 10 visits a month, but they're getting 2 conversions. And it's like, that's a huge conversion rate, right? Usually you need like 1,000 visits, right? Or like to get like 2 conversions sometimes. So
Yeah,
it's pretty cool. Yeah.
got it. Cool. All right, next one. What are some best practices to avoid being downranked, especially when it comes to executing this strategy?
Yeah. So again, like making sure you're targeting different keywords, I think number one, and making sure that there is at least some evidence that the keyword is being searched is like number one, to just make sure that there's no cannibalization going on. Because I think that is like a big part of being downranked sometimes. It's just cannibalization. Now, in terms of being downranked, like penalty wise, I honestly don't think that's going to happen if you did all this pre-research steps that I talked about, because your pages are going to be helpful and are going to answer the query and is useful, especially if you're bringing in internal data and answering straight to the point, right? But then I think tactically, to avoid being downranked, I would definitely recommend internal link strategy, making sure all the pages link to each other. Like, for example, I'm just going to keep going back to this wall hub one because I had a blast with it. Like, the 12,000 page links to the 13,000 page, 13,000 page links to the 14,000 page. Within the page, there's like a table that goes through like 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000. So they're all linking to each other. On top of that, their pillar page, how much are Delta miles worth, pillar page links to these pages as well. And so they have a good kind of like juice flowing around all the pages. And that's practically a good way to make sure that Google will crawl your pages.
Yeah, that's funny that you bring up internal linking because we have a question from Jonathan Bischoff. How do you factor in internal linking when you're creating hundreds, thousands of pages? Do you follow some sort of strategy, or is there a quick hack when it comes to linking all of these pages quickly and effectively?
Yeah. Hey, Jonathan. Yeah, cool. He's a good friend. Um, yeah. So as I kind of mentioned here, like there's pretty much like you can just 10,000, 11,000, like you like that. For example, with local pages, if you have all the cities within a state, you can link those pages together. And this is why using a table or like a spreadsheet is helpful, because those formulas I mentioned are going to help you categorize your pages and then determine the set of internal links that you should link to each other. So like maybe like practical clear example is like, if let's say you're doing programmatic pages for the state of California and the state of Texas, right? You have like Los Angeles, San Francisco, whatever, like pages there. And you also have Houston and Dallas pages. You can, in your table, basically, if California, then randomize the link here. So basically, I like to do a randomizer. So let's say there's like 50 cities in California and then 20 cities in Houston or in Texas. These 50 cities, I would have a randomizer to make sure they're all linking to each other, maybe 2 or 3 times, and then make sure they all get at least one internal link. And then the 20 cities in Texas, they would have their own internal linking architecture. And you use that and plan all that in the table that I talked about using formulas. That's the way I found it easiest to do it, unless you tell an engineer to do it. That could take some time because a lot of times engineers, we don't think through all the edge cases we care about.
Got it. So pretty much be an Excel ninja and you'll be
Kinda,
able
yeah.
to. Okay,
Yeah.
got
Otherwise,
it.
something as easy as this, where it's just like the next page, like the next page, like the next page, like the next page, that also works too.
Hmm.
So if you just have 100, just like the first page, like the second page, like the third page, as long as they're all topically relevant, there should be no problems there. And make sure your other pillar pages are also linking to these programmatic pages to just ensure the crawl.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Got it. Cool. This one comes from Arun K. Could you give examples of a few companies that do programmatic SEO really well? You already shared some examples, so I think Arun is just asking for a couple of other websites that
For sure.
think of.
Yeah. All of the sites that like all the stuff that I talked about today have come from my like background with content SEO. So a lot of this is like content programmatic strategies, but there's a lot of product programmatic strategies. I think for example, Ryan's Modash example is sort of like a product programmatic example where you're actually using company product data and pushing it out live. And so some of the best examples of those are Yelp, Zillow, Airbnb, like because they're basically Airbnb's all of their product, their home listings, they're categorizing it by London Airbnbs, right? By California Airbnbs, by every city, every address area, zip code, right? And so they have programmatic pages that are categorized according to like the keyword sets, like, this zip code, like hotels in this zip code or hotels in this state, right? And so that's a really cool many layer programmatic process that they've executed really well. But I'm kind of trying to make it more accessible to most of us here, which is probably more used to the content programmatic style.
Yeah, gotcha. So far we're talking about, launching thousands of pages, and Anchal Pandey asked a question, I think in regards to keeping content updated. So if we're launching, 2000 plus pages based off of a couple of these keyword patterns, then how can the content stay relevant in a couple of years from now? Any suggestions?
Yeah, that is a big challenge. And honestly, that is something I have not 100% figured out yet either. The only way right at the moment that I can think of is like for optimization. Like I think ultimately you're talking about optimization. So kind of revisiting your keyword sets like 6 months right from publish and being like these ones are getting like no impressions, so we need to redirect them, right? So that's like one thing. If it like starts being not useful, you should actually clean it up. Now in terms of optimizing the content itself, if you have the pipeline established, it actually should be very easy to publish new pages by just tweaking your database with the right content, right? Because this content is already in your table and it's going to populate all the rows as you change the original content. If you use AI, you could just kind of republish with new AI content. I would not recommend doing that for the whole thing, but like for targeted sets of pages that you think need refresh, you could just redo the AI and it'll be pretty cheap. But basically, that's why I mentioned that programmatic SEO is a operational process, because once you have that pipeline set up, you can pretty much publish 10 pages and 100 pages and 1,000 pages pretty much in the same time. So yeah, updating the content itself would be not too difficult. It's just the question of which pages to update. That's the challenge a lot of times.
Got it. Cool. Rajesh Ravi asks about crawl budget. Is there a limit on how many pages we can submit for indexing? And is there a total page limit per domain or any related best practices or, speaking from experience in regards to that?
Yeah, I would never really know the exact answer to this. I'm telling you that like I haven't experienced it yet. And actually for example, I think the example I mentioned with the 10,000 pages, like we actually started, I noticed we started getting more crawl budget and actually faster crawling and indexing when we started scaling our publishing. Just because the stuff was useful, there was traffic to it. And so I think Google actually has a variable crawl budget for every site, depending on how much traffic they're getting. So yeah, that's why I like would hesitate to recommend programmatic SEO to sites that are getting no traffic, because it's probably very difficult to get that ramp up into trust and crawl budget. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Yashika T asks, talking in regards to keyword patterns, There could or would be keywords with very little to no search volume at all. I think in your presentation, you said to avoid zero search volume key terms. Would you recommend still pursuing those terms?
Oh yeah, and I actually, so if that was what I said, I did not mean that. I actually meant to actually like take as many, like exhaust the number of possibilities and variants that you have, and don't delete the zero volume or blank volume keywords, because they are there for a reason. Like they've been picked up somehow by either Google or by Ahrefs, right? Like they actually do get a little bit of search volume. And I've actually seen, so a lot of times, like not a lot of times, like, I've tested launching programmatic SEO pages to keywords that didn't exist in anything, like didn't exist in any of these tools I mentioned, like just using some intuition. And like, I'm like, okay, let's just like publish, these 100 pages here have zero information about them, like these keywords. Let's publish them. And then they still, a big part of them maybe didn't get indexed or didn't actually work out, but there's a small subset of them that actually started getting traffic, and actually started getting conversions, even though none of these keyword tools had picked them up. And so that's why, again, I mentioned that programmatic SEO is kind of like fishing. You
Hmm.
don't really know, the keyword research tools only tell you that much. And that's actually how you get competitive advantage, is that you're not using the keyword research tools like everybody else is. And you're actually like fishing for keywords that haven't existed in any of these places, and then noticing that there are actually searches happening for them.
Got it. Next one. Ashwarya asks, how much does brand tone and voice matter in such cases?
Yeah. So I had a slide later that kind of deleted because I thought I was like getting too technical, but you're able to like a lot of times in the AI prompting that I mentioned, like we barely went into depth there, but there are tools these days that help you try to infuse brand voice. And one of the I think one of the suggestions I had here is like, was it this one? Basically provide examples. So um, the pages that we published on ClickUp was like a pretty good shadow of the ClickUp brand voice. Like it was not exact, of course, it still sounded a little bit robotic, but it had a lot of the core factors of our brand voice in there because it provided a ton of examples to the AI prompts. So, by the way, like the prompts that I usually build for every single one of these um, page template elements that require AI usually are like 2,000 words, 1,000, 2,000 words long, because they include a ton of examples. And I want to
Hmm.
make sure I have control around exactly how um, the output is. Like we can't just have it say like, write a what is statement, and then they're just going to write something very generic, right? I'm going to say like, write a
Yeah.
what is statement. Here are 10 what is like articles we've written, and like here are all the guidelines. Write it with 3 bullet points, start with the hook, or use the ADA formula, right? So stuff like that. Like I'm very detailed around how that one AI block should be created.
Got it. Cool. Well, I just want to be cognizant of time. We have about 6 minutes left, and there's probably around six other questions, which we'll probably only get to about two or three more. So the next one is from Anurag. Hey, Mason, we noticed ClickUp traffic is decreasing. Is it because of programmatic SEO? Not sure, but I found so many discussions on LinkedIn regarding ClickUp traffic. What are your thoughts?
Oh, really? I haven't seen any of those discussions. I think that it's just an overall decrease just from uh all the recent, updates, the new SERP features, things like that. I actually don't think they're doing too much programmatic SEO since I left. I'm not sure. Like I haven't talked to them too much. And actually, the last time I talked to my manager, I think he was saying that like the pages were still like one of the best things that were like keeping the SEO there actually. So
Yeah.
you might want to check which pages are losing traffic, because it might not be the programmatic ones. It could be a lot of the other strategies that ClickUp was pursuing. So again, yeah, as I mentioned, like is your risk tolerance and like diversification of strategies. So even if it might look like it's decreasing, there's a ton of other things that are working well to kind of keep it from losing value.
Yeah. With all
Yeah.
of the changes that have been happening on Google the past couple of months, what is your stance when it comes to AI overviews and, all of those kind of changes that have been taking place? And does it even affect programmatic SEO and the future of it, in your opinion?
Yeah. So I think, um, when I answer these questions too, like it's just kind of an SEO standpoint, because programmatic SEO, as I kind of mentioned, is the same as SEO. It's just programmatic is like a way to execute SEO. So everything that Google updates will impact all SEO, and programmatic will also be impacted. So this AI overviews thing is definitely like making it so that there's less traffic going to original sites. And they're kind of like synthesizing a lot of the site content, which is hilarious because a lot of sites these days are AI anyway. So I would I would say that, yeah, there's impact on programmatic SEO in such that it also impacts regular SEO.
Got it. Cool. Um,
Yeah.
Next question, maybe the last question. Shubiksha asks, so all these programmatic pages should definitely need a pillar page, and these pillar pages should have links to these cluster pages. What do you think?
Depends on what your keyword pattern is. So yeah, you can think of it like a pillar and cluster model where the cluster is like the programmatic set. But also you don't need to think of it like that either. I think that I didn't actually initially need to have a pillar page. Um, but I think having a pillar page might actually help with discoverability and rankability from like Google's crawlers. Um, so this is something I can't quite give an opinion about, like exactly whether you should have a pillar page or not.
No worries. I mean,
Yeah.
everything you shared over the past hour has been super insightful. And I think I can speak for everyone here that we all took a lot away from this conversation. I think Yoshika says, helped clear many doubts. So, yeah, really informative session. Just a reminder to our audience, we'll be sharing the recording of today's Coach by TripleDart, the forecasting tool that Mason was sharing, as well as the slides. So keep a lookout for that email coming into your inbox. Before we sign off, Mason, if anyone wants to connect with you or has any specific questions about what you covered, where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, so you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Just like add a message that, I saw you on the workshop, because I do get a lot of connection requests these days that I'm like not really accepting. But yeah, like, connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy with that. And then I also have masons-u.com as like my quote unquote personal site that I kind of need to update, but that's also like I do sometimes put in some of my opinions in there. So yeah, LinkedIn or my personal site would be good.
Perfect. We'll be sure to include that in our recap email and also within the YouTube description when this goes live later. And if you're curious about programmatic SEO, or if you're interested in finding out other strategic growth opportunities to explore for your product, please feel free to reach out to me or connect with via our TripleDart website, and we can get a conversation started. Once again, Mason, thank you so much for today's session and everything you shared today. I know our audience and our team is super grateful for this download, and we're excited to roll this out to more of our clients. So we really appreciate you dropping by, Coach by TripleDart.
Thanks so much, Glenn, and thanks TripleDart team. Nice to see everybody on the call. Bye.
Cool. Bye, everyone. Take care. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time.